Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Fed Up, your no BS nutrition podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Marie, certified personal trainer and nutrition specialist, working with clients since 2014. After swimming up diet culture's bullshit stream for so many years, I am fed the absolute up with how miserable it's making people feel when we are supposed to be getting healthier. This podcast is here to help you gain your sanity back so you can stop yo-yoing once and for all and finally learn how to trust yourself so you can enjoy food again without fear or shame while still getting to your health goals. My aim is to teach you how to detect the BS in not just the food and diet industries, but in all realms of life, because I know that, like me, we are all just a little fed up. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. I am so glad you're here because I was listening to a different podcast, not my own. Of course, I don't really listen to my own podcast. And she was trying to explain the difference between true hunger and cravings, or more maybe emotional cravings, mental cravings. And man, it was so painful. I couldn't even finish the episode. And I had to write my own because this message of if you are truly hungry, you'll just eat a bowl of vegetables or you'll eat an apple or like you'll eat something healthy. Otherwise, anything else is like a mental, physical, craving for a food that you don't need because of X, Y, and Z, rather than the true driver of cravings, which we will talk about today. And also the real difference between hunger and cravings and emotional eating and having food noise is something that we've been hearing a lot about, especially as new medications are hitting the market that are supposedly helping with this food noise. So one other thing that she said on this podcast that really grinded my gears, she said hunger is biological and cravings are physiological. Okay, maybe to the common listener, that doesn't seem like a big deal because maybe that is something different. Like physiological maybe encompasses all the things, but like biological is just the physical. No. Okay, your brain is physical. Your hormones are physical and biological. Even your cravings are still going to be biological. And they are physiological because guess what? Those mean the same thing. Something cannot be biological and not be physiological and vice versa. We might use different terms in different settings, but like those are the same words. And here's the problem. Hunger is a lot more complex than simply wanting a bowl of vegetables. And cravings are always mental, but they can and are often caused by physical, biological triggers. So let's get into it, shall we? First things first, let's talk about food noise. This happens a lot, and a lot of people maybe didn't even realize they struggled with food noise until we started talking about it, right? It's the constant thinking about food. It is the thinking about food while you're eating the food that you're not even like present with the food you're eating because you're thinking about the next meal, or you're thinking about things related to food and your body that are obsessing over your thoughts and you're distracted, honestly, because you're constantly thinking about your food, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, what's next for food, what's next for dinner. And this is different than if you are food insecure and maybe you don't know where your next meal is coming from and you are actually hungry a lot of the time because you do not have access to food. I'm not talking about that population because that is a different solution than what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the type of food noise that creeps in when you're at work. You know what you're going to make for dinner, but you can't stop thinking about it, or you're thinking about going through the drive-thru or sneaking a couple of extra muffins from the conference room when nobody's looking, or, it's just, again, this constant obsessive about food. And this food noise often also is maybe the umbrella term for cravings. And when you have a craving, I just really want something sweet, something salty, something savory. I just want like pizza. And we're usually associating cravings with things that are unhealthy because we don't crave things that are quote unquote healthy typically. Until, and this is a good example because we all kind of experience this. If you've been traveling, especially road trips, you are on the road for 2, 3 days. You're eating like fast food and gas station snacks, right? A lot of times, all you crave is a salad, a piece of fruit, something refreshing, right? Some tacos, not something heavy and greasy and gross. Not always, this isn't for everybody, but like that type of feeling of like, man, all I kind of want is like something refreshing. That doesn't happen very often until you don't have access to those types of food, right? So, cravings across the board, when they have researched as much as we can research about this, because obviously studying humans is very complex, they are mostly driven by either physical or mental restriction. And what I mean by that is physical restriction, you are actually not getting enough calories, not getting enough carbohydrates and sugars or something like that. And so you are craving sugars. Or you are also triggered by a mental restriction where you are thinking you should not have that certain food. Now, cravings or like a need or a desire for a certain food is also triggered by environment. When you smell that food, when you see that food, when you pass by that food, habit, right? So I actually was told the other day that because I bake cakes also, it's really funny because I am known as the personal trainer person, right? But I also, to a certain type of people, I am known as the cupcake lady, right? That's my other demographic. And one of my friends told me the other day that she saw me and like her mouth immediately started watering. And I've Pavloved my friends because they associate me with cupcakes now. And it's great. So, like, that environmental trigger of seeing me or seeing a cupcake or being reminded of a cupcake or smelling a cupcake will increase that desire for a cupcake. That's not you having a craving, that's an environmental trigger. And so, emotional eating, a lot of times, is what we are doing to relieve stress and relieve or cope with an unpleasant emotion like boredom, or even something that we've like conditioned ourselves to treat ourselves, right? When we're happy or when we're celebrating with food. So, emotional eating or having these cravings that are triggered by restriction or environment, nothing's wrong with you. There's nothing you need to fix. I get this question all the time. How do I fix these cravings? How do I stop doing this? How do I hold on? You haven't even dealt with your emotional eating. So even if I give you the best advice of the world in the world, as soon as you are stressed, as soon as you are bored, as soon as you are happy and celebrating whatever it is, you turn to food. So number one, to actually regulate yourself with emotional eating or binge eating, or again, like having these extreme cravings that you can't seem to get under control, is find the trigger. Number one. So is it environmental? Is it a physical restriction or a mental restriction? Or is it stress and emotions that you're having that are driving you to these certain foods? So I also want to talk about like craving chocolate does not mean that you're necessarily deficient in magnesium or in a certain vitamin or mineral that that food has. However, I don't know. I kind of believe, yeah, if you're maybe low on iron, you might crave some steak. But I know a lot of people that are low on iron and they're vegetarian. They never crave steak. So I don't know how viable that is. But if you are having cravings for high calorie, nutrient dense foods like high fat and high sugary foods, that is a real physiological phenomenon because your body and your brain understand what foods have high calorie and high carb and high sugar, because when you are energy depleted because you're not eating enough, or you skipped a meal, or you had a little tiny breakfast and then like a boring ass salad for lunch, and now it's dinner time and the only thing you can think of is like greasy hamburgers or pizza or like snacking chips or the cookies or like all the quote unquote junk food or like unhealthy food that you quote unquote have a craving for. In reality, it could be the physiological, mental, and physical drive to consume a high calorie, nutrient dense food because you are energy depleted. So this is why I also recommend like front loading your calories rather than skipping breakfast and skipping lunch or eating really light and then having a big fat dinner. Granted, this is a little bit cultural. Like we're not the only ones who do this as Americans, but like having a huge dinner before bed has other, cascading effects, but a lot of times it's driven by not eating enough earlier in the day. So this is where that motto of eat more to lose weight or eat more to eat less comes from, because as you eat more breakfast, lunch, snacks, then you're able to actually regulate yourself at nighttime. When all of a sudden you're off work, your discipline and your willpower are way lower at the end of the day. No matter who you are, it is going to be lower at the end of the day because you've used the willpower. And we call it restraint theory a lot of times, where this is again, a documented thing where the more you restrict, the more you restrain yourself, the more that willpower depletes. And then at the end of the day or at the end of the week or the end of the month or the end of your challenge, whatever it may be, all of your willpower seems to drop to the bottom. And then you're convinced something's wrong with you, or that one thing gets in the way, and then you just, I stopped doing everything and now I have to start over. You don't have to start over. You have to learn how to deal with your stress. You have to learn how to lean into understanding what is driving your cravings, right? Is it because you've actually not eaten enough today? Is it because you're restricting yourself from the sugar? So now your brain and your body are craving sugar. That's a real thing. This happens in animals and in humans, which we are. But I mean, in animal studies and in human studies, the more you restrict, the more you will crave. This food scarcity mindset creates the food noise. Now, granted, there is some evidence that now, who knows, chicken or the egg, which came first? Say you are somebody who's struggling with food noise, you've yo-yo dieted, but how do you just stop having food noise? It's not like you can just will your thoughts into different thoughts. Yes, you can over a course of a long period of time of meditation, of practice, of therapy, right? There are ways to transform your thoughts. However, what GLP-1 medications do, what that hormone does in your body is it sends fullness signals to your brain, right? So it tells you to stop eating, and it gets rid of the food noise because you're not hungry anymore. Another way to do that without the medication is to repair your relationship with food by giving yourself unconditional permission to eat and being able to turn to other coping mechanisms besides stress, right? Instead of snacking as soon as you get home because you're bored, you're stressed, your willpower's low, and then you're starving because you barely ate lunch because you worked through it, and now you're snacking on chips while you're making dinner. You eat dinner way too fast, so you end up eating way more than you mean to, and then you still have dessert. So instead, you allow yourself a little more food earlier in the day. You find a way to cope with your stress, physical activity, a yoga class, meditation, a breath work. Something that I do like where people will say, hey, if you're having a craving or a binge feeling, an urge, go on a walk, right? Okay, yes, but I don't want you to prolong true hunger, right? I want you to be able to tune into the intuitive eating, but you won't be able to be intuitive if you are being restrictive. And if you haven't developed a regular eating pattern because you eat at random times of days or time of the day, some days you eat a lot, some days you eat barely anything, right? So establishing a regular eating pattern with both balanced meals, enough eating, throughout the day, things like that. And you're getting, some of the fun foods that you crave. You're allowing yourself some candy and some chips and some of the foods that are quote unquote off limits. Because as soon as you make them off limits, you put them on a pedestal and you will crave them and you make them special. And I've worked with people long enough where it'll be a couple of years that I've seen this pattern where it repeats itself, where they will, I don't keep any sweets in the house. I eat whole foods and organic, and I'm cooking salmon and vegetables, just protein and vegetables, and I'm meal prepping. And then 3 to 6 months later, it's they completely fall off the plan because it was incredibly unsustainable. And then they're just binging constantly, or they never have sweets in the house, but they're stopping at the gas station or stopping at the pastry mart every time they're at the grocery store, or they're, at work and someone brings in cupcakes and they have 4 of them rather than 1 or maybe even 2, because it's this, I need to eat it because I can never have it. Or because I can never have it, I'm thinking about it all the time. You're giving it so much power. And this is something that seems so simple, but it is hard to do because you have to practice and like decondition yourself out of it. And again, you have to replace it with something. So this takes practice. This takes counseling. This takes a professional to help you through a lot of times and a lot of education and knowledge, because intuitive eating does not come intuitively if you have spent a long time ignoring those signals. You don't have those signals anymore because the signals are in overdrive to tell you to eat certain foods. So your cravings are high, your portions are high, and you don't understand when you're hungry or you're full because you wait all day to eat anyway until you're overly hungry, and then you eat until you're stuffed. Or you're just never really hungry and you're not paying attention to these things. Or you're always hungry and you're constantly snacking. I also know that working at home can be really hard because people will be like, I'm kind of bored, or I'm just like in between meetings, or I'm at my desk, and they're just constantly eating. So I want you to have 3 complete, full, balanced meals per day. That means they have carbs, fiber, protein, fats. They have something tasty. They have something satisfying about them. You enjoy them. You eat them slowly and mindfully. You ask yourself, am I hungry still? Am I full yet? And one thing that we do is the Hunger-to-Fullness scale for intuitive eating. Again, it's not about, oh, my intuition tells me to eat all the cupcakes. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. That's your like hormone and your scarcity mindset that says go eat all the cupcakes because you never allow yourself cupcakes. And if you don't eat them all now, then when are you going to have cupcakes again? Or you eat one and then you think, okay, let me finish them so that I don't eat them later, or I don't eat them tomorrow. Or you say, F it, I'm just going to eat them all, whatever it is. You might just be mindless about it, right? So like this is so different for each person, but hopefully some of that resonates. But something that you can do, or something that like, even for me, I don't necessarily struggle with this like all or nothing binge restrict mindset, but I do struggle with knowing my own internal cues. So I'll go all day without eating because I can and because I'm busy and whatever. And then I wonder why I can, down a whole pizza at night. But I also know that when I start to get hungry, my first signaling of I'm hungry is actually thinking about food. And that's kind of hard when you're always thinking about food because you have food noise, right? So, assuming we've kind of worked through the food noise, or you have a regular eating pattern now, you eat breakfast, you eat lunch, you eat some snacks, right? You eat dinner. Notice when you first get hungry and rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is uncomfortably full. It is like after Thanksgiving, you almost feel sick, like you're having some reflux. You can't really walk, you can't, breathe. 6 to a 7 is comfortably full. This is where you should maybe check in halfway through a meal. A 5 is comfortably not hungry or not full. A 1 to a 2 hunger level is like you're having headaches, you're irritable, you can't focus, you're lightheadedness, you're dizzy, right? Like you're starving, you're hangry. A 3 and a 4 is where you want to eat. So once I feel the first pang of hunger, or I first think about food, I'm going to say, okay, I'm probably like a level 4. Like I'm not starving, but my stomach is empty. That's a 4. And then a couple, minutes later, 30 minutes later, 2 hours later, right? Like when did you get food after that? So I notice I dropped from a 4 to like a 3 to a 2 to a 1 pretty quickly if I don't get food within about an hour. So as soon as I'm thinking about food, and I'm not always good at this, right? I'm just now really practicing this. So I'm thinking about food. I'm noticing my stomach is kind of empty. That's about a 4. Now I'm 30 minutes, 45 minutes later. It's about a 3. My stomach maybe started growling. I'm actually thinking about like, okay, what am I going to eat for my next meal? Because it's about time. Now, you should probably eat like now. But if you don't, you wait another hour. Now you're at a 2. Your hunger might go away a little bit. You forget about it because your brain is like, okay, cool, we're not getting food yet. I'll ignore that for a moment so you can focus on whatever it is you're focusing on. But now it's going to come up with a vengeance, or you'll start noticing symptoms like you get a headache. You have low motivation. You're a little bit crabby. You can't focus. You can't concentrate. You're getting sleepy. A lot of times your 2, 3 p.m. slump is because you need a snack. And now you're at a 1, right? Like you are hangry, you're starving. So you drive home or you drive through the drive-through, you order DoorDash, whatever it is, you get food, and then you eat until you're like a level 8 or a 9 because you eat so ravenously that you don't even notice. And then next thing you know, it's 20 minutes later and you're like, oh God, I ate too much. And now you feel guilty, and hence the shame spiral commences, and then rinse and repeat, right? So if you can learn to tell when you are a level 3 or a 4 and you can get access to food pretty quickly, eat until you're maybe about halfway through your meal, eat slowly, and then ask yourself, okay, am I at a 5? I'm comfortably not hungry anymore, but I'm not really full. You probably want to eat a little bit more, usually, especially if you're not going to eat another, soon again. So eat a little bit more, check in again. Okay, now I'm like a 6.5, a 7. I'm pretty comfortably full. I'm not hungry anymore. The food will actually start tasting less good, actually. So you can start to say, okay, maybe I'll stop. And then if I want more in a little bit, I can always get more, right? Like you have unconditional permission to eat. It's not the last time you can have this food. You can practice this whether it's pizza or a salad or a cupcake or a full salmon, rice, broccoli dinner. You want to check in with yourself and be able to tell, okay, my stomach is distended. I think I'm full. Now, again, if you have GLP-1 disruption, if you have chronic obesity, if you have yo-yo dieted for a long time, if you're autistic or ADHD and you have some type of neurodivergence, your interoception, which is your ability to tell if you're hungry or full, may be a lot less responsive and maybe way out of whack. So I'll actually have people do like timed feedings a lot of time at first, but the goal is to be able to tune into the scale eventually. And learning how to do this takes a lot of time, a lot of practice, a lot of skill, a lot of, setting up the environment properly. But overall, I want you to know that like nothing's wrong with you for eating emotionally. Nothing's wrong with you for having cravings and being surrounded by a food environment that is highly palatable. It tastes real effing good. We're stressed all the time. We don't get enough vitamin D or movement. We're sitting in our stupid cubicles all day long. And then we take work home with us. We're driving in a car. It's our only solace. You're seeking comfort when we want to eat in our cars, right? Like we're seeking comfort when we want some salty French fries and nostalgia, and we're seeking relief. So emotional eating is not a willpower problem. It's not you're craving sugar because you're addicted problem. It's a regulation problem. It's you've been dieting so long that you don't have hunger or fullness cues. Your interoception is all thrown off, and you've conditioned yourself and been conditioned by others around you, your parents who started to feed you as a young child, right? All of those things combine and compound over time, and it becomes a lot harder to have structure around your eating, around your meals, around your timing, and around your control of portions and hunger cues and all of those things. So give yourself some grace, and I hope that this episode kind of give you some insight into some triggers for emotional eating or some tools for that. So if you need a little more support, please email me hello@KaylaMarieFitness.com. Send me a DM on Instagram at KaylaMarie_fit. I would love to chit chat with you. I love talking about this stuff, and I want to make sure that you get all the resources you need. So I look forward to chatting with you. Bye. Thanks so much for being here, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please screenshot and tag me over on Instagram or leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening from. Your support means the world to me and only helps me get the No BS news out to more people. If you're interested in working with me in nutrition or personal training, check out my programs and courses on my website at KaylaMarieFitness.com and on Instagram at KaylaMarie_fit. See you next week.